Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a computer programming instructor, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to use the random function in C++. So we'll open up Visual Studio, create a new project. It'll be a C++ empty project, and we'll call it random demo. We're going to store this on the desktop. I'm going to set my properties, set the subsystem in linker and system to console so that it won't close my console window when I'm running without debug. And then I'm going to add a new item. It'll be a CPP file which we'll call random demo. I'm going to input some standard items that we use for our programs. We're going to include IOStream for input-output, use the standard namespace, put some comments in to explain what this is for. We'll have a main function that will return 0 to indicate that execution was okay to the operating system. What we're going to do with this program is declare some variables. We're going to start a do while loop. We're going to display a random number, and then loop back if user wants another. So that's what we're coding. And first I'll start with the loop. We're going to use a do another string, and since we want this to run at least one time, I'm going to use a do loop. And we'll need to include the string library. So at this point we just have a loop. I'll test it just to make sure that my loop is functioning. So now that I know my loop is functioning, the next thing to do is display a random number. So in order to display a random number, we're going to use the random function. And what we'll do is we can see that it exists, comes in with the standard system functions. And we're just going to display random. Will display a random number between 0 and the maximum there's a maximum possible value for random, which is dependent on the size of the of an integer, basically. And we'll just run this initially. So I hit Control F5, click yes, and we see we are in fact getting random numbers of all sorts. What I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to run this twice. And notice that they're distributed randomly, but we always get the same random numbers back and forth. So that's not very random, really, if you think about it. We would much prefer that these are continuously change. So, getting this, if we don't want to get the same distribution every time, we need to do something. And what we need to do is, it's called seeding. We need to seed the random number generator. And the way we can do that is we can use the srand function. And what the srand function takes is an unsigned int. So we could provide, say, an integer, and then hit Control and then run it. But if we just provide an integer, we now get a different set of numbers. Run it again so that I have two instances. But still, even though it's a different set of random numbers, it's still the same sequence of random numbers. So we can't just provide a number. And the way we handle this is we actually pass in the system time. As the seed, and what that does, and we can do that by using the time function, but to use the time function we actually have to include another library. So we're going to include the C time library, and time function takes a value and since we don't really care about what comes back from, as long as it's different each time the user runs it, we're just going to put a null in here. And what this does, this unsigned time t, it gets the time back, converts it to an unsigned value, and then passes it on to rand. And since the odds of two users starting program exactly, you can't really start the program at exactly the same time each time, this will actually seed the random number generator so it's different each time. So now when I run it, that's my first run. And we can see already that we are getting a different sequence of random numbers. So that's what the seed function does here. srand means seed random. We pass it the clock using this time function, and then we can get different random numbers. But suppose we don't want just any old random number, but we want the number to actually be between a range. Let's say we want it to be between 1 and 6. Well, it turns out what you can do is you can actually use the modulus operation. So Let's declare another variable. We're going to call this int dice roll to represent a six-sided dice. And then we'll say dice roll is equal to a random number, and we're going to take the modulus of it by 6. This will actually limit the values that we get, and we'll display that. And so it looks pretty good so far. We'll keep clicking yes, and we see we're getting random numbers possibly between 1 and 6. But what we see is actually we're getting numbers between 0 and 5. So this is pretty close, this mod 6. But if you think about it, if I take the mod of 6, I will never get 6. What I actually have to do is take the mod of 6 plus 1. And rather than getting 0 to 5, this will now make this 1 to 6. And there's a 6, there's a 5, do I get a 1? And there's a 1. So I'm getting distribution now between 1 and 6. So this is how we can use the random number generator, and it's usually in this format. We can take random, we take the modulus of it, and then we add whatever a number, and we do this in order to create the range that we want. In this case we wanted 1 through 6. But let's say we wanted 3 through 15, for example. Well, if we want between 3 and 15, if we think about this, then that's really, if I subtract 3 from both sides, that would be 0 to 12, then add 3. So that's the way you can think about it. If I want a number between 3 and 15, I want to go from 0 to 12, then add 3. So I will change this to 12. I will change that to 3. And then we'll try it out. There's a 4. There's a 12. Try again. And we probably have to run it a number of times to see if we actually got the number. But this kind of makes sense because the modulus is going to give me a number between, well, probably not, because the modulus of 12 will never give me a 12. It'll give me 11, and that's really 3 through 14. So I really need probably modulus of 13 to get 0 through 12 and then add 3. So that's really what my formula needs to be. So sometimes this can be kind of difficult to figure out. You have to think through it a little bit. But one approach is write the range that you want, subtract the minimum value on both sides to get to the range from 0 to 12. And so you know you're going to add 3, and then that gives you this number here. And then for the modulus piece, it's really going to be this number plus 1. This completes my demonstration of random. Thank you very much.